Elder stood before the cracked viewing window of the last light and watched his people die slowly. The flagship had carried them across 3 star systems, running from the Empire for 2 long cycles. Now the old ship groaned with every movement, its hull by battles and desperate escapes. Behind him, the bridge crew worked in silence. There was nothing left to say. The fleet's 12 ships carried the last 2 million in existence. Their home world was gone. Their allies had abandoned them, and now their time was running out. Elder said, his young translator, stepping forward with a data pad. The water recyclers on ships 4 and 7 have failed completely. We have maybe 15 days before critical shortage. Closed his 4 eyes and let out a slow breath. His body felt heavier than ever. He was old, even by standards, and the weight of his people's survival pressed down on him like a physical force. "And the children?" he asked quietly. Hesitated. That pause told him everything. The medical ships had stopped sending reports 3 days ago. They did not want to tell him how many young ones they had lost to hunger and sickness. "How many today?" pressed. 12, Elder. 12 more returned to the stars. Turned away from the window. Across the bridge, High Priest sat in prayer, his ancient body wrapped in ceremonial robes that had grown too large for his thinning frame. Even Faith was starving. "We cannot continue like this," said. "We must find shelter, or we will all die in the cold dark between stars." "No one will take us," replied. "The Dominion refused our request. The collective said we would bring this anger upon them. Even the neutral stations have turned us away. We are poison to everyone we meet." Walked slowly to the communications console. His clawed hands rested on the controls as he considered the impossible choice before him. "There is one species we have not contacted," he said. The bridge went quiet, even stopped his prayers and looked up. Elder said carefully, "You cannot mean the humans." "I do. But the stories about them. The other races say they are dangerous, unpredictable. They call them the mad builders and the soft predators. No one truly understands what they want or what they will do." Nodded slowly. "Yes, I have heard all the stories, but I have also heard that they do not turn away those who ask for help. I have heard that they build things no other species bothers to build, and I have heard that they fight for reasons no one else understands." "They could enslave us," argued. "They could take our ships, our technology, our people." "Perhaps," agreed. "Or perhaps they will help us. We have no other options, young one. We can die slowly in the darkness, or we can reach out to the unknown and hope." He began entering commands into the console. Around him, the bridge crew watched with fear in their eyes. They had all heard the rumors about humanity. A young species, barely 1,000 years into space travel. But in that short time, they had spread across hundreds of worlds. They built massive stations and terraformed dead planets. They fought wars that made no logical sense, dying for ideas and strangers. The galaxy did not know what to make of them. Some said they were the most dangerous species ever to reach the stars. Others said they were simply insane. Finished composing the message. It was simple, honest, desperate. Our home is destroyed, our people are dying. We have fled across the galaxy and no one will help us. We have nowhere else to go. We ask only for shelter. We will give anything in return, please. Our children are dying." He transmitted the signal toward human space and stepped back from the console. "Now we wait," he said. The first day passed in tense silence. The crew kept watching the communication screens, jumping at every flicker. Nothing came. The second day was worse. Hope had begun to fade, stopped checking the screens and went back to her duties, helping distribute the last food rations among the ships. On the third day, had accepted that no answer would come. The humans had either not received the message or had chosen to ignore it. He sat alone in his quarters, composing final words to his people, when burst through the door. "Elder, a response. We have received a human response." ran to the bridge faster than his old body should have allowed. The crew had gathered around the main screen, their faces showing a mixture of hope and terror. "Play it," commanded. The message was not what he expected. He had prepared himself for questions, negotiations, demands. He expected the humans to ask what they could offer, what they were willing to trade for safety. Instead, the message contained only coordinates and a single line of text. "Hold position, help is coming." Read it 3 times, certain he had missed something. Where were the conditions? Where were the requirements? Every other species had asked what they could give in exchange for aid. The humans had asked for nothing. "What does this mean?" asked. "I do not know," admitted, "but we will stay and find out." High Priest rose from his seat and approached the screen. He stared at the human words for a long moment. "Perhaps," the old priest said quietly, "we have finally met a species that does not calculate the value of mercy." They waited for 3 more days. The fleet hung motionless in empty space, conserving every drop of fuel and every breath of air. Barely slept, spending his nights staring out the viewing window at the stars. On the morning of the 4th day, the sensors screamed to life. "Multiple contacts," the navigation officer reported, his voice shaking. 17 vessels dropping out of faster-than-light travel. Gripped the railing as the ships appeared on the screen. They were enormous. Each human vessel dwarfed the largest cruiser. They moved in perfect formation, surrounding the refugee fleet like a protective shell. Stepped closer to the display, her eyes wide. "Elder," she whispered, "those are warships. They have sent warships." Looked at the massive human fleet and felt his heart sink. Perhaps they had made a terrible mistake. Perhaps the stories were true. Perhaps the humans had come not to shelter them but to claim them. But then he noticed something strange. The human weapons were not powered. Their shields were raised but facing outward, away from the ships. They had positioned themselves not as predators circling prey, but as guardians forming a wall. A new transmission arrived. A human face appeared on the screen, a female with tired eyes and a calm expression. "This is Commander Laura of the Human Relief Fleet. We received your call. We are here to help." Found that he could not speak. After everything they had survived, after every door that had closed in their faces, someone had finally answered. And they had brought an army. Commander Laura's face filled the main screen of the last light. She looked tired, as if she had not slept in days. Behind her, the bridge of the human vessel hummed with activity. Dozens of humans moved with purpose, checking screens and calling out reports. "Elder," she continued, "I understand you have been running for a long time. That ends today." Found his voice at last. "Commander, we are grateful for your response, but I must confess that we do not understand. We asked for shelter. You have brought warships." Nodded slowly. Her expression remained calm, professional, but something softer moved behind her eyes. "Let me explain what we have brought," she said. "My fleet consists of 17 vessels, 4 command ships to coordinate operations, 6 engineering vessels carrying construction equipment and materials, 5 enforcer cruisers for security, and 2 medical frigates fully stocked and ready." Stepped forward, her translator instincts taking over. "Forgive me, Commander, but I must ask directly. Why have you sent soldiers and enforcers to answer refugees? We carry no weapons. We have nothing of value. We are simply people trying to survive." The human commander was silent for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice was softer. "You asked the wrong question," said. "You should ask what we sent them for, not why we sent them." "Then tell us," replied. "We sent commanders to organize your protection and ensure your people receive help efficiently. We sent engineers to build you a home, a real home with solid ground and clean air. And we sent enforcers to make sure that no one ever takes that home from you again." Felt his legs weaken. He gripped the railing to steady himself. Beside him had gone completely still. "You mean to build us a colony?" asked. "We have already identified a suitable moon in a neutral system," confirmed. "Uninhabited, but capable of supporting life with some work. My engineers are ready to begin construction as soon as we arrive." "But this will cost you greatly," protested. "Resources, time, the labor of your people. What do you want in exchange?" The human commander tilted her head slightly, as if the question confused her. "We want you to live," she said simply. "That is enough." High Priest fell to his knees. The old began to weep openly, his thin body shaking with sobs. Around the bridge, others joined him. 2 million had fled across the galaxy, begging for scraps of mercy. Every powerful species had calculated the cost and turned them away. Now these strange humans had arrived with a fleet capable of conquest, and they spoke only of building and protecting. Wiped his own eyes. Did not often cry, but some moments demanded tears. "Commander," he said, his voice breaking, "we have met many species in our flight. All of them asked what we could offer before they would help. You are the first to simply say yes." His expression softened further. "I am sorry that the galaxy treated you that way, but you have reached human space now. Things will be different here." The communication ended and preparations began immediately. Was true to her word. Within hours, shuttles launched from the medical frigates and began docking with ships. Human doctors in white suits boarded the vessels, carrying supplies and equipment. Dr. Shaw led the first medical team onto the last light. She was a small woman with brown hair pulled back tight and eyes that seemed to see everything at once. She walked through the corridors of the old ship, taking in the damage, the worn faces, the too thin children. "Set up triage in the main hall," she ordered her team. "Priority to the youngest and oldest. Everyone else start distributing nutrition packs." Followed the human doctor through the ship. She watched as Shaw knelt beside a sick child, checking vital signs with gentle hands. The child's mother hovered nearby, too afraid to hope. "Will she survive?" the mother asked. Shaw looked up and smiled. It was a tired smile, but a real one. "She is malnourished and dehydrated, but we caught it in time. She will be running around in a few days." The mother collapsed against the wall, crying with relief. Shaw simply moved to the next patient, as if saving lives was just another task on her list. "You do this often," observed, "helping strangers." Shaw paused and looked at the young. "More often than you might think. Humans have a saying, when someone needs help, you help them. It is not complicated." "But everything has a cost," argued. "That is how the universe works. Nothing is free." The human doctor stood and stretched her tired back. "The universe does not get to decide what we do. We decide. And we decided a long time ago that letting people suffer when we can help is not acceptable. The cost is our problem, not yours." Did not know how to respond. Her entire understanding of how species interacted was crumbling. Every lesson she had learned, every rule of galactic politics, told her that the strong took from the weak. That was the natural order. But these humans seemed to exist outside that order. They had the power to take whatever they wanted. Instead, they chose to give. The fleet traveled together for 8 days. During that time, the human ships shared power with failing systems. They transferred food, water, and medicine without once asking for payment. Human engineers crossed between ships, repairing critical systems that had been breaking down for months. Walked the corridors of his own ship and barely recognized it. The lights worked properly again. The air tasted clean. Children laughed in the halls for the first time in cycles. On the 9th day, they reached the coordinates had provided. A small moon hung in the darkness, orbiting a gas giant in an uninhabited system. "It does not look like much," admitted over the communication channel, "but give us time." The engineering vessels moved into position. Massive machines began descending to the surface. Through the viewing window, watched as humanity went to work. He was about to speak when an alarm cut through the bridge. The navigation officer turned pale. "Multiple contacts on long-range sensors," he reported. 40 vessels, military signatures. His blood went cold. The Empire had found them. After everything, after finally reaching safety, the hunters had caught up. "How long until they arrive?" His voice came through the channel, calm as ever. 6 hours, Commander." There was a pause. When spoke again, her voice had changed. The softness was gone, replaced by something harder. "Then we have 6 hours to get ready. All enforcer ships to combat positions. Engineering teams, continue your work on the surface. We will handle this." Stared at the screen. 40 warships against 17 human vessels. The numbers were impossible. "Commander," he said, "you cannot fight them. You will be destroyed." Laura looked directly into the camera. Her tired eyes had turned to steel. "Elder, your people asked us for shelter. We gave our word that we would provide it. They can bring 40 ships or 400. It does not matter. We are not leaving, and neither are you." She cut the transmission. Turn 2. The young translator was trembling. "They are going to fight," she whispered. "They are going to fight an empire for strangers they just met." Watched the human ships moving into defensive formations, positioning themselves between thee and the approaching enemy. "Yes," he said quietly, "that appears to be what humans do." Engineer Sam Caldwell stood on the barren surface of the moon and looked up at the stars. Somewhere up there, 40 warships were racing toward them. He had 6 hours. That was not nearly enough time to finish a colony, but it was enough time to make sure those refugees had somewhere safe to hide when the fighting started. "Listen up," he called to his crews through the communication system. "We have less than 6 hours before enemy ships arrive. I want underground shelters dug, reinforced, and sealed before a single shot is fired. Nobody sleeps. Nobody stops. Those people up there are counting on us." Around him, hundreds of human engineers and construction workers moved into action. Heavy machinery rolled across the dusty ground, carving trenches and drilling into rock. Atmospheric processors hummed to life, beginning the slow work of creating breathable air. Prefabricated shelter units were unloaded from transport ships and assembled with practiced speed. Caldwell had built colonies before. He had spent 20 years turning dead rocks into living worlds, but he had never worked under this kind of pressure. Every minute counted. Every delay could cost lives. He found himself thinking about the children he had seen on the refugee ships. Thin, tired, scared. They deserved a real home. They deserved to play in parks and sleep in warm beds without wondering if tomorrow would be their last day. He was going to give them that, or he was going to die trying. Elder requested permission to visit the construction site. Commander granted it immediately. A shuttle carried and down to the surface, where Sam Caldwell met them personally. "Watch your step," Caldwell said, helping the old down the ramp. "The ground is still rough. We have not had time to smooth the paths yet." Looked around in amazement. The landscape had transformed in just hours. Where there had been nothing but rocks and dust, structures now rose from the ground. Machines carved tunnels into the hillsides. Workers ran back and forth, shouting instructions and hauling materials. "How is this possible?" asked. "You have been here less than a day." Caldwell shrugged. His face was covered in dust and sweat. His hands were rough from labor, but he smiled with genuine pride. "Humans do not like sitting still," he said. "When there is work to be done, we do it. Simple as that." He led them through the construction zone, explaining each section as they walked. Here were the water recyclers, drawing moisture from the thin atmosphere and purifying it for use. There were the power generators, running on fuel cells that would last for years. Beyond that, the first residential shelters were taking shape, simple but solid structures with room for families. Stopped beside a group of workers assembling wall panels. They were young humans, barely adults by the look of them. They worked without complaint, their movements quick and efficient despite obvious exhaustion. One young woman noticed him watching. She paused her work and pulled off her gloves, walking over to greet him. "You are elder," she said. "I saw your picture on the briefing documents. I am Jenny." "You are very young to be doing such hard work," observed. Jenny laughed. It was a bright sound, full of life despite the circumstances. "I am 22, old enough to swing a hammer and carry panels. Besides, someone has to build your new home." She reached for her water canteen and took a long drink. Then, without hesitation, she offered it too. "You must be thirsty," she said. "The dust here gets everywhere." Stared at the offered water. Clean water was precious. These humans were working themselves to exhaustion in dangerous conditions, and this young woman was sharing her own supply with a stranger. He accepted the canteen and drank. The water was warm but clean. It tasted like kindness. "Thank you," he said, returning the canteen. Jenny smiled and went back to work. It was such a small gesture, but it broke something inside. He turned away so she would not see his tears. Spent her time moving between human work crews, practicing her English and learning their customs. She was amazed by how they communicated. They argued constantly, shouting at each other across the construction site. But there was no anger in it. They disagreed loudly, then laughed together moments later. "You seem to fight often," she observed to one crew leader. The man, a tall human named Greg, laughed loudly. "Fight? No, we are just talking. Humans are loud. It does not mean we are angry." "But you were just yelling at that man about the placement of the water tanks." "Because he was wrong," Greg said simply. "The tanks go on the east side where the ground is more stable. I told him. He argued. I yelled. He agreed. Now the tanks are in the right place. Problem solved." Shook her head. "Among my people, raised voices mean serious conflict. It would take days of careful discussion to resolve such a disagreement." Greg shrugged. "We do not have days, we have hours. So we yell, we fix it, we move on. Efficiency." It was a strange kind of efficiency, thought, but it seemed to work. Despite all the arguments and shouting, the colony was rising from the dust at incredible speed. Sam Caldwell found Elder standing alone at the edge of the construction zone, looking up at the stars. "They will be here soon," said quietly. "Your fleet will fight them." "They will," Caldwell agreed. "Many of your people will die, for us, for strangers you met only days ago." Caldwell stood beside the old alien and followed his gaze to the stars. Somewhere up there, human warships were preparing for battle. Men and women were checking weapons and writing final messages to loved ones. They knew the odds. They knew they might not survive. "Can I tell you something?" Caldwell asked. Nodded. "When I was young, my family lost our home in a fire. We had nothing. No money, no place to go. We were ready to give up." Caldwell paused, gathering his thoughts. Then strangers showed up, people we had never met. They brought food, clothes, building materials. They helped us rebuild. When I asked them why, they said that someone had helped them once and they were passing it forward. He turned to face directly. "That is why we are here, Elder. Someone helped us once. Now we help you. Maybe someday you will help someone else. That is how it works. That is what humans do." Was silent for a long moment. Then he placed one of his clawed hands on Caldwell's shoulder. "I have lived for many years," said. "I have met countless species across the galaxy. None of them think like you do. None of them believe that helping strangers is simply what one does." "Maybe that is the problem with the galaxy," Caldwell replied. "Not enough people willing to be first." An alert rang through Caldwell's communication device. He checked the display and his expression hardened. "The fleet just entered the system," he announced. "All workers begin moving to underground shelters. We are out of time." Looked at the half-finished colony around him. It was not complete, but it was something. Walls stood where hours ago there had been nothing. Tunnels led deep into the rock, offering protection from bombardment. The first seeds of a new home had been planted. Above them, The stars began to shift as human warships moved into battle formation. "Go to the shelters," Caldwell told. "Take your people underground. We will handle what comes next." Grip the human's hand. "May your ancestors protect you." Caldwell smiled grimly. "If they do not, we will protect ourselves. Go now, quickly." And ran for the shuttle. As they lifted off, they watched through the window as human workers continued their tasks, even as warnings blared across the surface. They did not stop building until the last possible moment. Even facing death, humans refused to give up. Enforcer Captain Danny stood on the bridge of the Iron Promise and watched the fleet approach. 40 warships against 17. The numbers did not lie. This was going to hurt. He turned to face his crew. They were young, most of them. Some had never seen real combat. They stood at their stations with steady hands and frightened eyes, waiting for orders. "I'm not going to give you a speech about glory," said. "There is no glory in what we are about to do. There is only duty. Down on that moon, 2 million people are hiding in holes we dug for them. They are scared. They have been running their whole lives. Today, we are the wall between them and the people who want to hurt them. That is all we need to be." He looked at each face in turn. "Some of us will not survive this fight. I need you to understand that now. But if we do our job, if we hold the line, those people will wake up tomorrow in their new home. Their children will grow up free. That is worth dying for. At least I think it is." A young officer raised her hand. "Captain, what if we cannot hold them?" Smiled grimly. "Then we make them pay for every inch. We make them hurt so badly that they never want to come back. One way or another, they survive today. That is the only outcome I will accept." The communication system crackled. Commander's voice filled the bridge. "All ships, this is. The commander has made contact. He is demanding we surrender the refugees or be destroyed. I told him no. He did not seem happy about it. Laughed despite the tension. I bet he did not." "Battle Formation Delta," continued. "Enforcers take the front line. Engineering ships fall back to protect the transports. Medical frigates stay behind the moon. No matter what happens, those civilians do not take fire. Is that clear?" A chorus of confirmations came through the channel. 17 ships moved as one, forming a defensive wall between the fleet and the helpless colony below. Admiral of the Empire did not understand what he was seeing. The humans were outnumbered more than 2 to 1. Their ships were tough, yes, but not invincible. Any rational species would have calculated the odds and surrendered. They would have handed over the refugees in exchange for safe passage. That was how the galaxy worked. But these humans refused to move. He opened a channel to the enemy flagship. "Human commander, you have made your point. Your courage is noted. But courage will not save you from superior numbers. Surrender the insects and we will allow you to leave." His face appeared on his screen. She looked calm, almost bored. "Admiral, I am going to give you one chance. Turn your fleet around and leave this system. They are under our protection now. They are not yours to take." Felt his scales ripple with anger. "You dare threaten the Empire. We have conquered 100 worlds. We have crushed species far more powerful than you." "Then you should have brought more ships," replied. "Last chance, Admiral, leave now." The transmission ended, roared in fury and gave the order to attack. The battle began with fire and light. Ships launched missiles in waves, trying to overwhelm the human defenses through sheer volume. The human fleet responded with precise counterfire, shooting down incoming weapons while returning shots of their own. But numbers mattered. They pushed forward, taking losses but closing the distance. Their tactics were simple and brutal. Surround the enemy, crush them from all sides, accept casualties as long as the mission succeeded. Watched the tactical display and made his decision. All enforcer ships break formation, engage at will. His officers looked at him in shock. Breaking formation meant chaos. It meant abandoning coordinated defense for individual combat. "Sir," his first officer questioned. "They expect us to fight like every other species they have beaten," explained. "Neat formations, predictable patterns, lines they can push through." He grinned fiercely. "Let us show them how humans fight." The Iron Promise surged forward, engines at maximum. Around it, the other Enforcer cruisers did the same, scattering across the battlefield like wolves released from chains. The formation broke as well, but not by choice. Human ships appeared from unexpected angles, striking hard and fast before pulling away. They did not stay still long enough to target. They did not fight fair. One Enforcer cruiser took heavy damage, its shields failing. Instead of retreating, the captain ordered ramming speed. The ship crashed into a destroyer, destroying both in a massive explosion that tore a hole in the enemy formation. "They are insane," muttered watching the display. "They are absolutely insane." On the surface of the moon, Sergeant Pete led ground defense teams against landing parties. The enemy had tried to bypass the space battle, sending troop transports to attack the colony directly. Had been waiting for them. "Contact at Grid 7, one of his soldiers reported. 12 enemy coming in hot." "Let them land," ordered, "then light them up." The soldiers emerged from their transports expecting frightened refugees. Instead, they found human soldiers dug into fortified positions with heavy weapons. The first wave died within seconds. The second wave tried to retreat but found their transports destroyed by surface-to-air missiles. "This moon belongs to the now," announced over the enemy communication frequency. "You are not welcome." Back in space, the battle had turned into a grinding war of attrition. The humans were taking terrible losses. 3 Enforcer cruisers had been destroyed. A 4th was venting atmosphere from multiple hull breaches. But for every human ship lost, 2 or 3 vessels had been crippled or destroyed. Admiral could not believe what he was seeing. His fleet should have overwhelmed the humans by now. Instead, they were being bled dry by an enemy that refused to die quietly. "Admiral," his tactical officer reported, "we have lost 18 ships. The humans have lost 6. At this rate, we will destroy their fleet, but we will have nothing left to occupy the moon." Hissed in frustration. This was supposed to be simple. Hunt down the refugees, destroy anyone who protected them, finish the extermination his empire had started. But these humans treated every life as precious. They threw themselves into fire to protect insects they had never met. It made no sense. On the Iron Promise, alarms screamed as another hit shook the hull. Gripped his chair and checked the damage reports. Shields at 12%. Weapons systems operating at half capacity. 3 decks had lost atmosphere. But they were still fighting. "Captain," his sensor officer called out, "bomber breaking through. It is heading for the main habitat." Looked at the display. The bomber had slipped past the defensive line during the chaos. If it reached the surface, hundreds of refugees would die. "All ships intercept that bomber," he ordered. "No one is in range," came the response, "except medical frigate 2. Dr. Shaw's voice came through the channel. She was aboard that frigate, treating wounded soldiers between battles. "We see it," Shaw said calmly. "We are moving to intercept." "Doctor, your ship has no weapons." "We have a hull and engines. That will have to be enough." "Understood immediately. No." "Take care of those people, Danny. That is what we came here for." The medical frigate accelerated toward the bomber. It was a desperate move, a suicide run. Shaw and her crew knew they would not survive. But a young pilot named Chris Adams had other ideas. His fighter had been damaged early in the battle, limping along with barely functioning engines. He had been heading back to the carrier for repairs when he heard the transmission. He looked at his damaged ship. He looked at the bomber racing toward innocent people. He made his choice. Adams pushed his engines beyond their limits, overtaking the medical frigate. His fighter slammed into the bomber at full speed. Both ships exploded in a ball of fire. Shaw lived. The habitat lived. 2 million survived because one pilot decided their lives mattered more than his own. The fleet began to withdraw. They had lost too many ships, too many soldiers. The cost of victory had become too high. Admiral sent one final transmission before his fleet retreated into faster-than-light travel. "What are you?" he demanded. "What kind of species dies for strangers?" Commander answered him directly. "The kind that keeps its promises. Do not come back." The stars went quiet. The battle was over, and against all odds the humans had won. 6 months had passed since the battle. Elder stood at the edge of the central plaza and looked out at what his people had built together with the humans. Green domes stretched across the surface of the moon, each one containing parks and gardens where children played. Underground cities hummed with life, connected by tunnels lined with lights and decorated with art from both species. It was beautiful, it was impossible, and it was home. At the center of the plaza stood a memorial, a simple pillar of white stone, carved with the names of every human who had died defending people they had never known. 47 names, 47 lives given freely so that strangers might live. Visited the memorial every day. They left small offerings at its base, flowers from the new gardens, drawings from children too young to understand what had been sacrificed for them, prayers written on colored paper. Visited the memorial often. He would stand before it in silence, reading the names over and over. Chris Adams, the young pilot who had crashed his damaged fighter into a bomber to save them all. Lisa Park, an engineer who had refused to evacuate a collapsing tunnel until every worker was safely out. A medic who had given his own oxygen supply to a sick child and suffocated in the thin air. They had not known these humans. They had not spoken to them, shared meals with them, or heard their stories. But these humans had died for them anyway. Did not fully understand. He was not sure he ever would, but he was grateful beyond words. Today was a special day. The human fleet was preparing to depart. Their mission was complete. The colony was established, protected by defense systems and recognized by the Galactic Council as sovereign territory. They had signed a treaty promising to leave the system alone. But before the humans left, there would be a ceremony, a chance for them to express their gratitude in the only way they could. The plaza filled with people. 2 million had become 3 million in 6 months, as children were born and hope returned to a species that had nearly lost everything. They gathered now to honor the humans who had made their survival possible. Commander Laura stood at the front of the human delegation. She wore her dress uniform, cleaned and pressed for the occasion. Beside her stood Chief Engineer Sam Caldwell, looking uncomfortable in formal clothes. Captain Danny had come as well, his arm still in a sling from injuries sustained in the battle. Dr. Shaw stood quietly at the end of the line, her eyes tired but warm. Approached the podium. In 6 months, she had become the official ambassador between the two species. She spoke English fluently now, having spent countless hours learning from human friends. 6 months ago, she began, my people sent a message into the darkness. We were dying. We had nowhere to go. Every species we asked for help turned us away. We expected the same from the humans. She paused, looking out at the crowd. We were wrong. Her voice grew stronger. The humans came to us with ships of war and we were afraid. We thought they meant to conquer us, to take what little we had left. Instead, they gave us everything. They built us homes. They fed our children. They stood between us and an empire that wanted us dead. Turned to face the human delegation. Tears ran down her face, but she did not wipe them away. 47 of your people died for us. They died protecting strangers. They died because they believed that our lives mattered. I do not have words in any language to express what that means to us. I can only say thank you. Thank you for seeing us. Thank you for helping us. Thank you for being who you are. She stepped back from the podium. The crowd erupted in applause that seemed to shake the dome itself. Commander approached the podium next. She looked out at the sea of faces and felt a wave of emotion she had been holding back for months. "I am not good at speeches," she admitted, "so I will keep this short." A few humans in the delegation laughed softly. "You asked us for shelter. We gave you a home. That is what humans do. We build things, we protect people. We fight for those who cannot fight for themselves. It is not complicated, it is not special, it is just who we are." She looked at the memorial in the center of the plaza. The men and women whose names are carved on that stone did not die because they were ordered to. They died because they chose to. They chose to believe that your lives mattered as much as their own. They chose to stand when they could have run. I hope you remember them. I hope you tell your children about them. And I hope that someday, when someone else needs help, you choose to stand as well. Step back. The applause continued for a long time. Elder was the last to speak. He approached the podium slowly, his old body tired but his heart's full. "I have lived for many years," he said. "I have seen the best and worst of what the galaxy has to offer. I have watched my home world burn. I have buried my friends and family. I have led my people through darkness that seemed endless." He looked at the humans. "And then we met you." His voice cracked with emotion. "The galaxy told us that the strong take from the weak, that compassion is a weakness, that helping strangers brings no reward, but you proved them all wrong. You came with weapons not to conquer but to protect. You built homes not for profit but for kindness. You died not for glory but for mercy." He straightened his back and lifted his head high. "Today I will send a message across the galaxy. I will tell every species what happened here. I will tell them about the humans who answered when no one else would. And I will give them a warning." His voice hardened. "Do not make the mistake they made. Do not look at the humans and see only a young species to be tested. Do not ask what they are capable of. Ask instead what they are willing to do for those they protect. The answer will terrify you." The ceremony ended with music. Songs mixed with human melodies, creating something new and beautiful. Children of both species played together in the gardens, chasing each other and laughing. That evening stood alone at the memorial. The sun was setting beyond the dome, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. It was peaceful, safe. Found him there an hour later. "The human ships are preparing to leave," she reported. "Commander wanted to say goodbye." Nodded, "I will come shortly." Hesitated. "Elder, do you think they will remember us? The humans have a large galaxy to explore, many peoples to meet. Will they remember the—" Smiled gently. "I think humans remember everything they choose to remember, and I think they will remember us, just as we will remember them." He placed one clawed hand on the memorial stone, feeling the carved names beneath his fingers. "We asked for shelter," he said quietly. "They gave us a home, they gave us hope, they gave us a future." He turned to face his young ambassador. "We will never forget what they did for us. And one day, when someone else asks us for help, we will answer the same way they did. We will build them a home. We will protect them from harm. We will become what the humans showed us we could be." Across the galaxy, his message spread. Species who had considered themselves predators heard the story of thee and the humans. They watched recordings of the battle. They saw the memorial. They listened to the words of an old alien who had learned that compassion was not weakness. Some dismissed it as propaganda. Others called it exaggeration. But many more looked toward human space and wondered. What kind of species would die for strangers? And what would happen if that species decided to protect everyone? The galaxy had no answers, but for the first time in a long while it had hope.